Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the people and the participants that are following us today from across the world. It's a great opportunity to have you all with us, and we are very excited about beginning to discuss with you in our webinar today, International Financial Sources and Institutions, organized by the International Urban Cooperation Program. My name is Giorgia Rambelli. I'm the head of the coordination unit based here in Brussels, and through our program today, we wish to cut through some of the complexity that come with international finance and to discuss and provide participants with some information on what kind of requirements and opportunities are out there. So today we strive to discuss a little bit how to bridge the gap between the funds available and the funds that are actually deployed to support sustainable urban development as well as climate action, and to share with local governments what is out there and what possibilities they have to make sure that their great plans really become practice in their territory. To help us with that, we have a great lineup of speakers from both international financial institutions as well as from the European Union. And we have also our expert, Miss Esther Mojoroshi. She's our financial expert for the IUC, and she will take us through the conversation this afternoon to really try to pinpoint the key aspect of the conversation on funding. Before we do that, I just would like to spend a few words about what is the IUC program. So probably most of you already know, but I think it's good to remind ourselves why we are here today discussing about funding. The IUC, International Urban Cooperation Program, it's a European funded program with the aim to enable cities in different parts of the world, in different global regions, to link up and to have the opportunity to share solutions to common problems that they are facing. The program is part of a long-term strategy fostered by the European Union to support sustainable urban development in cooperation with the public and the private sector, as well as from representative of the innovation, research, and even with the community groups and citizens. So today we will have the opportunity to really dig a little bit more into the aspect of funding and see how through this we can support the IUC, cities, and other stakeholders that are supporting them in their action to implement actions that can support and contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as to the commitments of the Paris Agreement and to the implementation of the urban agenda. So without any further hesitation, I would like to invite Esther to please take the floor and to guide us through the discussion.
Thank you, Georgia, for this introduction. I would also like to welcome all the participants and our speakers at the webinar. Before we move to the presentations and substantial discussions, I would like to mention some technical issues. So first of all, this webinar will be and is already recorded. Secondly, you are muted. So in case you have questions, and we really would like to encourage you to have a lot of questions, and then you can use the question box you can see in the control panel. Here we can collect all the questions, and then we can address them during the question and answer sessions. The other possibility is that during the question and answer sessions, you can use this little symbol you see raising your hand, and then we can unmute you, and then you can address your question directly. Regarding the agenda, which you can already see on the screen, we have speakers, as Georgia already mentioned, from the international institutions, but we also have one city speaker from Rotterdam sharing with us their experience on how to access those funds from a city perspective. There is also a publication supporting this webinar, and it has just been uploaded to the website, so please also check it later. And in this publication, you will see that we categorize the financial flows available for urban development in two big groups, public and private finance. And within the public, we also distinguish the multi and bilateral development banks, the UN Development and Climate Funds, the EU funds, and the national, regional, multi and bilateral finance. So today we have here speakers from the European Union, from international financial institutions, and the UN climate funds. So starting with this letter, first I would like to give the floor to Hyun-Wo Kim from the UNFCCC Finance, Technology and Capacity Building Program. Please, the floor is yours.
So just to introduce myself again, hello, my name is Hyun-Wo Kim, or I'm better known as Noah. It's a pleasure to meet everybody today virtually. I'll take the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes to share with you some information on supporting the urban climate actions provided by the operating entities of the financial mechanism under the UNFCCC. So today my presentation will be in 4 parts. First, I will share some background information on how the Paris Agreement highlights the importance of cities and the climate finance architecture under the UNFCCC. Secondly, I'll try to share information on what the GCF is doing to channel financial support for cities. Thirdly, I will share information on the impact programs on sustainable cities that the Global Environment Facility has programmed into its 6th and 7th replenishment cycle. And fourth and lastly, I'll try to share some information about the upcoming forum of the Standing Committee on Finance that will be held this year, focusing on climate finance and sustainable cities. So first slide is the Paris Agreement and cities. As you may all know, the Paris Agreement signaled the importance of unprecedented universal actions in fighting climate change involving actors at all levels. This is clearly stated in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, which reads that parties to the Paris Agreement agrees to upholding and promoting regional and international cooperation in order to mobilize stronger and more ambitious climate action by all parties and non-party stakeholders, including civil society, the private sector, financial institutions, and cities and other subnational authorities, local communities, and indigenous peoples. So I think it's very important that the cities, important cities is highlighted by the Paris Agreement itself. The importance of cities' role in fighting climate change is also reflected in other articles of the Paris Agreement. For example, the Article 7.2 states that parties recognize that adaptation is a global challenge faced by all local, subnational, national dimensions. So both in terms of the general action against climate change and the adaptation action, the city is highlighted as a very important actor. Obviously, no action can be undertaken without the important component of financial support. So the Article 9 of the Paris Agreement underlines the importance of provision of financial support for mitigation and adaptation actions. And the Paris Agreement clearly states that the financial mechanism of the convention shall serve the Paris Agreement. Now, before I move on to explaining about the support provided the GCF and the GEF as operating entities of the financial mechanism that serves the Paris Agreement, I thought it may be useful to take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to explain to you the climate finance architecture that's under the UNFCCC, which may help you understand the full picture of the activities and the actors under the UNFCCC. So this, the diagram that you see in front of you explains the architecture of the climate finance under the UNFCCC in a single snapshot. Starting from the bottom left side, under the UNFCCC, parties discuss ways to scale up the mobilization of climate finance to fight climate change. The discussions back in Copenhagen and Cancun UN Climate Change Conference on the developed countries' joint goal to mobilize $100 billion starting from 2020 can be categorized into this circle. Currently, under the UNFCCC, the discussions on mobilization of public and private finance is held under different activities, including what you see on the screen, the long-term finance workshops, high-level ministerial dialogues, and facilitated dialogue among parties. So these kind of discussions are aimed to provide the technical and political support to parties' efforts to scale up the finance. The second circle in the middle reads oversight. So if there is a financial flow from one source to another, there should be a source of credible information about that flow so that the decision makers, like a lot of you who have tuned into this webinar, can make informed decisions relating to climate finance. The role of keeping an oversight of climate finance flows is played by the Standing Committee on Finance under the IUC, which is a 20-member climate finance expert body under the Convention and the Paris Agreement that produces, for example, the biennial assessment and overview of climate finance flows. It's a report about climate finance flows as credible and authoritative information with a UN stamp on where the world is in terms of climate finance flows. So it is informed by the data collectors and data aggregators. And in a way, one could say the SCF, the Standing Committee on Finance, plays a crucial role to enhance the transparency of support provided by developed countries to developing countries. Third and last circle on the right is the delivery mechanism. And this is what I will focus my rest of the presentation on. Under the financial mechanism, there are two operating entities, namely the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environment Facility. Being the entities in charge of the operation of the financial mechanism, this means that these two institutions function under the guidance of the COP, which decides its policies, program priorities, and eligibility criteria. You see the adaptation fund at the bottom. Although it serves the Paris Agreement, it is not really an operating entity as a financial mechanism as such, because it was created initially under the Kyoto Protocol regime. However, the GCF, GEF, and the AEF are all de facto delivery mechanism of the climate finance to developing countries that is currently governed by parties. So I reckon that there is a speaker after me from the Adaptation Fund. So maybe my presentation will only focus on the GCF and the GEF and how they are supporting urban actions. I would like to also add that there are many international climate funds that are outside of the IUC regime and have different governing arrangements. For example, the Climate Investment Fund. However, since it's not a UN that falls under the UN umbrella, I will not cover any information related to that during this webinar. So moving on to the Green Climate Fund. This is a fund that was established as the outcome of the UN Climate Change Conference held in 2010 in Cancun, and is an operating entity of the financial mechanism. It currently has 102 projects and programs in its pipeline, amounting to US dollar $5 billion of grant money by the GCF. The GCF can be accessed through its accredited entities. There are currently 84 of them, and the balance in the number of the direct access entities and the international access entities is roughly about half and half. It's a rough figure, of course. There's a line of additional entities that had completed and submitted their application for accreditation, and they are in the various stages of accreditation process. With the aim of accrediting the entities that fill mandate on balance, diversity, coverage, and advancing GCF objectives, the GCF board continues to prioritize entities for applying for accreditation that are national direct access entities in the Asia Pacific and Eastern European regions, private sector entities, in particular those in developing countries, entities responding to requests for proposals issued by the GCF, accredited entities seeking fulfillment of the conditions for accreditation, and so forth. So there are many entities that are still lining up to be accredited to access the fund and the resource contained therein. So many countries, particularly from those small developing countries with small economies, often found it difficult to access the fund and manage the resource according to what we have witnessed under the IUC umbrella. So what the GCF is currently doing is running readiness and preparatory support, which was put in place to enhance the country ownership and help countries access GCF resources. It provides the resources for strengthening the institutional capacities of national designated authorities or focal points and entities to effectively engage with the SCF. the GCF, sorry. So there are these kind of the measures are currently ongoing to help countries and city and maybe by the city authority as well, seeking accreditation to GCF to utilize its fund. The GCF is currently in the process of first formal replenishment, which is expected to finish in October this year. So moving on to the strategic results areas of the GCF, we have seen that what you see on the screen, the circular the diagrams on the bottom is the 8 strategic results areas of the GCF. And as you can see, it consists of mitigation and adaptation related impact areas. And the red ticks represent the areas that are strongly relevant to the urban actions. And according to the GCF document, an analysis of the GCF portfolio shows that a continuous strong emphasis is on energy, building, and cities in the mitigation results areas to begin with. And then it's also the case in the increased resilience of cities, because an increasing number of proposals submitted to the GCF focuses on urban resilience as a cross-cutting issue between adaptation and mitigation to maximize the synergy and also the impact at the city level. These are some of the examples of the GCF projects and programs related to cities. For example, the one in Pakistan and the one in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Currently speaking, the GCF has 2 funding windows of mitigation adaptation, and there's currently no strategy per se that is solely aimed to facilitate the action by cities. But there are numerous accredited entities that are currently talking with the urban actors to fund their projects, and some of these 2 are some of the examples that the GCF has right now in its portfolio. More information could be found in the GCF website link that I have provided in the slide. I reckon that I've already spent like 9 minutes. I'll try to speed up. The second the operating entity is that I'll cover the Global Environment Facility, and it can be accessed through 18 GEF agencies. And the GEF has recently gone through its 7 replenishment discussions, amounting to $4.1 billion for the focal areas, including biodiversity, climate change mitigation, land degradation, and chemicals and waste. Because the GEF serves as a financial mechanism to multiple number of environmental agreements, multilateral environmental agreements. What the GEF is doing to support urban action is that it's running impact program on sustainable cities during the GEF 7 period. Actually, it was called integrated approach program during the GEF 6 replenishment cycle. So it's a flagship initiative that started during the GEF 6 as a pilot scheme, but now it's mainstream into the GEF 7 programming. And it's designed to support cities tackle global environment challenges through an integrated and sustainability approach, because in a city, that the challenges that cities are facing, they do not have silos of different multilateral agreement that we have, like for example the biodiversity, climate change, waste, and chemicals. But these kind of issues are all closely interwoven. So the aim of the GEF 7 impact program of Sustainable City is to tackle those issues in a holistic and integrated manner. So this is the list of 27 cities that are participating in the GEF Sustainable Cities program. I thought it would be useful for you as to have an overview of what the GEF is currently doing to support the cities. I'll just quickly move on to my last slide, which is relating to the SCF Forum on Climate Finance in Cities. As I told you earlier, the SCF is a climate finance expert body under the UNFCCC, and it has decided that it will focus its annual forum on climate finance and sustainable cities to enhance the communication and exchange of information among actors involved in climate finance at the city level, with the sub-themes including cities, low emission and low emission development, climate resilience, capacity building of local authorities to access climate finance, and the role of climate finance in facilitating our transitions towards inclusive and participatory society. So the outcomes of the forum will feed into the discussions at the COP under the agenda item of the Standing Committee on Finance. And it's the aim of the forum is to see what kind of actors are there working on climate finance and sustainable cities. What are some of the challenges and gaps faced by city authorities and different actors, and try to find a way to overcome those kind of gaps and challenges by enhancing communication, enhancing collaboration and coordination, and see if there's any kind of area that requires further attention by the COP. So the draft program is still in the making by the Standing Committee. They will be meeting next week in Bonn, and they will be finalizing the program and the venue and the exact time of this forum that will be held this year. More information can be found in the link contained in the slide. So that was a very quick snapshot of the UN climate funds, namely the GCF and the GEF, and what they're doing to support the cities. And I hope this provided or at least triggered some of the thoughts from the participant side. And if you visit the following web pages, you'll be able to find more detailed information about what I've just presented. A little caveat is that since we as a UN Climate Change Secretariat deals with intergovernmental process relating to the JCF and the GEF, we are more familiar with the programs and the policy and program priorities, and we keep regular touch with the GCF and the GEF at the technical level. So I'll be happy to, after this presentation, I'll be happy to take any questions related to these aspects. And then if there are any questions that is outside of my expertise, I'll be happy to connect you further with someone who would know the answers to those questions. Thank you very much, and sorry for taking a long time.
Thank you very much, Noah. So you already mentioned the Adaptation Fund, but today we have with us Christina Dengel, who is a Knowledge Management Officer at the Adaptation Fund. And now she will tell us more on how exactly this fund works and what are the ways to access that. And after Christina's presentation, we will have a short question and answer session where we can which we can dedicate on the UN climate funds. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes. Thank you, and good morning, everyone from Washington, or good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Christina Dengel, and I'm the Knowledge Management Officer here at the fund based in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to give you a very brief presentation on the Adaptation Fund. Esther mentioned that I, unfortunately, due to other commitments, I can only stay here very shortly, but I'm happy to take questions afterwards for 2-3 minutes or by email. So the Adaptation Fund was established under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to fund concrete, tailored adaptation projects for the most vulnerable in the communities. It was essentially the fund that pioneered the direct access modality, which empowered developing countries to build their own adaptive capacities while developing projects and accessing funds directly from the fund. The Adaptation Fund gives, through this way, developing countries full ownership of adaptation projects from planning to implementation, all while ensuring monitoring and transparency at every step. So what are some of the benefits of direct access? And first of all, what is direct access? It is whereby a country can access the funds directly from the Adaptation Fund or any other fund for that matter, such as the Green Climate Fund, to manage adaptation or mitigation projects. In the case of the Adaptation Fund, obviously it's only adaptation projects. So what does it require to be able to do? It requires an accredited national implementing entity meeting the fund's fiduciary standards, environmental and social safeguards, and gender policy. So essentially, all developing country parties to the Kyoto Protocol are eligible to nominate an entity for accreditation. And once an entity passes the fund's rigorous accreditation review, it may apply for project funding. Essentially, the fund has a panel of accreditation experts, which is independent from us, who works with these institutions, these implementing entities, and walks them through the accreditation process, assisting them. It's not, of course, a guarantee they will get accredited, but it's they offer assistance to them. So what are the benefits of direct access? Is it strengthens readiness for climate finance, it increases ownership at country level, it ensures transparency to full cycle, it elevates issues related to adaptation and climate change to the national level. Essentially, over the years, we've seen an increase in the number of accredited entities. You see, a little diagram here showing that there's absolutely no intermediary between the funds, so the funds go directly to the countries. We currently are working with 46 implementing entities, of which 28 are national implementing entities. Of these, 46% are located in LDCs and CITES countries, and of these, 10 are located in Africa. Some of the newest ones that we've accredited last year were Tanzania and Niger. We've also accredited 6 regional implementing entities and 12 multilateral implementing entities, such as the World Bank, the IDB, UN agencies, and such. You can also see on the screen a distribution of these implementing entities. Some of the highest numbers are in Africa, followed, of course, by Latin America and the Caribbean, but also Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia, and only 2 of them in Eastern Europe. So what is the experience on funding climate adaptation of the Adaptation Fund? So since its inception, the fund has mobilized $738 million in resources. $199 million came from the certified emission reduction proceeds, which have declined rapidly due to the collapse of the carbon market, and an additional $538 million from developed countries' contributions, Germany being one of the most important contributors. The resources allocated so far amount to $532 million in 81 countries, of which 28 are least developed country states and 18 are in small island developing states. So the Adaptation Fund currently funds 80 concrete localized adaptation and resilience projects in 81 vulnerable countries, with reaching around 5.8 million direct beneficiaries. And these are the most vulnerable in these communities. So its projects are effective, flexible, and scalable, and can be replicated in other communities as well. So as I mentioned, the $532 million are distributed the way you see it on the screen regionally. So the highest number are in Africa and Asia and Pacific with 28 projects each, followed by Latin America and the Caribbean with 22 projects for a total of $166.1 million, and then 2 projects only in Eastern Europe. What has been the other development at the Adaptation Fund is that at the board meeting in October 2017, the Adaptation Fund board approved the 5-year medium-term strategy. And this medium-term strategy consists of 3 pillars: that of action, so essentially funding projects, innovation, and learning and sharing. So the fund's purpose will continue to be aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement and with the SDG 13, and its focus will continue to remain on the most vulnerable in the communities. What it also approved is, following the next board meeting in March 2018, was the medium-term strategy's implementation plan. And this implementation plan stipulates approves additional funding windows apart from the existing ones under each pillar. So basically, under the action pillar, there is a new window for enhanced direct access for a total of $20 million per year for up to 10 grants, so it would be an average of 2 grants per year. It also approved additional project scale-up microgrants, whose purpose is to increase the readiness of the accredited national implementing entities to expand or replicate quality projects based on country needs and priorities in order to reach more people and to help vulnerable communities. These microgrants will be for a total of $200,000 per year for up to 10 grants. So it will be an average of $100,000 per grant or per project. Under the innovation pillar, there are 2 new funding windows. one has already started and has been launched, the other one not yet. So the large grants of up to $5 million for rolling out and scaling up innovation. So we'll fund a total of $90 million over 5 years for around a total of 18 grants. So as part of this funding window, the Adaptation Fund will partner with multilateral, like an MIE aggregator who holds the knowledge and the expertise and innovation. These grants have not been launched yet. The call for proposal will be launched, but not mistaken, by August of this year. Then an additional funding window is out of microgrants of up to $250,000 for encouraging new innovation and creating evidence base. It will be a total of $16 million over 5 years for about 64 grants. And finally, under the learning and sharing pillar, the Adaptation Fund Board approved the South-South Learning Microgrants, whose purpose is to share knowledge from NIEs to NIEs, or from NIEs to the wider climate finance adaptation community, or to form partnerships through collaborations with knowledge institutions. These will be grants for up to $150,000 for sharing best practices or lessons learned. So we will grant around 15 grants over 5 years. So there's already been a call for proposal issued in November for these grants, and proposals have already come in and are under discussion at the current board meeting in Bonn. So on the Adaptation Fund's urban portfolio, of course, most of the sectors that we currently fund are in agriculture, food security, water management, and such. But over time, the Adaptation Fund's portfolio has increased its urban focus, and we predict that as demand for adaptation in the urban setting will grow, we anticipate receiving more proposals in the urban sphere. Already during the last October board meeting, 2 new projects with an urban focus were approved in Fiji and the Solomon Islands. I'm going to quickly go over some. I think we have 4 or 5 projects in the urban setting, but it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of the type of projects that we fund in the urban sphere. The one in Fiji is a project totaling $4.24 million, and it's a project implemented by UN Habitat, which is one of our accredited MIEs. Its purpose is to increase the resilience of informal urban settlements highly vulnerable to climate change and disaster risks. It will reach 6,000 direct beneficiaries, and it will train around 220 in resilient construction methods, business skills, and microfinance access, and coastal zone management. The project in Solomon Islands totals $4.4 million, and it's also implemented by UN Habitat. And its purpose is to enhance the resilience of Honiara and its inhabitants to current and future climate impacts, and also to strengthen institutions at the city level to respond to climate change, sea level rise, and natural disasters. Other projects that we have financed in the past with an urban component or an urban focus is one in Honduras, totaling $5.6 million, which was implemented by UNDP. And its aim is that of securing water supplies of Tegucigalpa and surrounding areas against water scarcity and extreme climate events. The project reached around 10,000 poor households, and they've ensured 50% increased access to water all year. It also made sure that 3,500 urban households at risk to mudslides from extreme rainfall stabilized homes through innovative rooftop water storage systems while harvesting water to local schools. And the other 2 projects that we financed in the past with an urban component are in Senegal and in Tanzania. Senegal, in fact, was our very first project financed through a national implementing entity, so it's direct access. It totaled $8.6 million and implemented by CSE of Senegal. It's really the project that pioneered the Adaptation Fund direct access modality. And its aim was that of protecting vulnerable people, homes, and economic infrastructure against coastal erosion while catalyzing related projects. So what it did is it built 730 meters of seawall protecting urban area. It ensured 3,000 tourism and fishing jobs that were preserved, and 5,000 food producers benefited from infrastructure improvements. And finally, the project in Tanzania, totaling $5.5 million, implemented also by an MIE, the UN Environment Program, and it helps safeguard livelihoods from rising sea levels, extreme weather, erosion, and floods in the city of Dar es Salaam. It built 2,400 meters of seawall. It protected around 1,000 hectares of mangrove habitat, and also 2,000 square meters of coral reefs were restored as part of funding this project. So this is pretty much the projects that we have financed so far, but we are currently in the process of looking into collaborations with organizations with an urban focus to expand, as we're trying to expand our urban portfolio. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, I can take questions directly. If they're specifically related to projects or accreditation, I can also direct you to the respective teams at the fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Before we continue with the other presentations, now we can have a very short question and answer session, but due to the limited time, we can take only 1 or 2 questions. I already see Claudio Bordi raising his hand. Claudio, sorry, we have some technical issues here. Can you please type your question in the question box, and then we can direct your question to the speaker you address. And meanwhile, we try to find a solution for this technical difficulty. So while we are trying to solve this, then instead of having now this question session, we move on with the presentations, and we move on with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And Peter as speaker, Peter Hirsch, analyst at the EBRD.
So at the EBRD, we've developed a program called EBRD Green Cities to focus on a systematic way to both assess, prioritize, and identify cities' most pressing environmental challenges, as well as put forward investment and policy solutions for them to pursue to address those challenges. And this has been a program that we've had up and running since 2016 that focuses our finance on delivering both climate and environmental solutions to cities. So to provide an overview of our business to date, so the EBRD was founded in 1991 and our municipal business officially launched in 1994. And since then, we've done over 8.2 billion in municipal and in infrastructure finance, mobilizing an almost equal amount in additional finance to those investments. This has been done over more than 450 projects and in more than 220 cities. And you can see from this chart, the volume of business has increased quite a bit in the past 5 years, now averaging over $1 billion in the past 2 years. The majority of this business, which I guess we would all expect, is green business, or what we classify as green, having some form of environmental or climate change benefit. So EBRD Green Cities, the specific framework that we've launched to look at the city's environmental and climate change challenges, is divided into 3 major components. The first is the delivery of strategy and policy support. And this takes the form of a product that we developed specifically for EBRD Green Cities called the Green City Action Plans. These GCAPs are then combined with transformational investments in municipal infrastructure, so that being the second component, and capacity building and stakeholder engagement, as well as technical assistance, helps to ensure that the investments that are a part of the framework are implemented successfully and the local capacity is built in order to operate those investments in an efficient manner. In order to be eligible for EBRD Green Cities, it has to be a city in one of our countries of operation. And for those of you who are not so familiar with the EBRD, we operate in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and Northern Africa, with our initial countries which we were founded on in 1991, being post-Soviet nations. So it gives you an idea of the region of the world in which we focus in. So it has to be located within our region, have a population of greater than 100,000. Cities also have to agree to conduct a Green City Action Plan. And I think this one key difference between our city's work and some of our peer institutions is this one requirement on initiating a trigger project in order to enter EBRD Green Cities. So what this effectively means is that in order to receive the full support of our program, the city needs to sign up for an investment from the start. And this investment has to demonstrate that it will have sufficient climate change or environmental impact. And we have thresholds that it needs to hit in terms of improvement over baseline. But this investment has to be in the municipal sector. So that can be anything from solid waste as listed here, water and wastewater, renewable energy, urban transport, climate change resilience, etc. But what this initial project does is within the legal agreements, covenants the development of a Green City Action Plan. Because more than often we see that these plans sit on a shelf when they're developed for these cities. And what we're trying to put forward is a methodology that ensures that the scope of work that is identified through the Green City Action Plan is really geared towards implementation, and that from the day one from its approval, you can start to translate these desired actions into specific investments. So the GCAP process then on this next slide you can see is a trigger investment which covenants the development of a Green City Action Plan. The Green City Action Plan then is able to identify specific investments and policy initiatives for a city to pursue, and following the approval of the GCAP, either EBRD, the private sector, the city's own budget, national budget, other IFIs are able to use the GCAP as sort of a menu of high priority items to address the city's most pressing environmental challenges to invest in as the follow-up investments. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the example that we had in Tbilisi, Georgia, where we started out with an investment in low emissions buses in Tbilisi that covenanted the development of the city's GCAP. This was approved in October of 2017, and last year we signed an investment with them to improve their management of the city's municipal waste as identified through the Green City Action Plan. So it's a holistic process where the follow-up investment was specifically identified as a targeted need from the plan. And going a little bit more depth into these Green City Action Plans, the process is three real phases. The first is what we call a baseline assessment. And this looks at the city's environmental performance across a number of sectors and different dimensions. We worked with the OECD in ICLEI, very lucky to have them as a part of the initial group to develop this methodology to identify a set of indicators to assess the city's environmental performance. So what this does is sort of quantitatively, you can benchmark where a city falls in terms of its environmental performance across a number of dimensions, and then combine that quantitative analysis with more qualitative stakeholder engagement to determine what are the priority areas that the city wants to focus on in terms of their climate change development, environmental development, or sustainable development. And once those priorities are identified, they get translated into a specific action plan, where over a 5-year period, indicative investments or policy items are identified to address the priorities that have been identified in the baseline. And in addition to this 5-year action plan, we also help the cities develop a long-term vision for their GCAPs. And this is more of about a 15-year time frame. So more qualitatively, where do they want to go in terms of their development? These are complemented by midterm targets as well that are a bit more quantitative. This is all to say that this action plan is then translated into targeted investments on the ground as well as policy initiatives. And the goal that we have here is really to push towards what we call political feasibility. It's not to have an action plan that goes beyond the scope of the potential budgetary limits of a city or the potential ability for a city to access finance. This is something that really can be implemented as a full vision over a 5-year period, as each of the actions that are identified within a GCAP also have indicative sources of finance identified, so that the city can already start from day one going out to those potential institutions and potentially acquiring the financial resources they need to see those investments through. So here's an example of the, as I was saying, the sort of full scope of what a GCAP might, the output of a GCAP might be. So this was the example for the Tirana in Albania, their GCAP, where across a number of dimensions, they identified the needs for investment, both in terms of the capital costs and the operating costs over a 5-year period. And for the potential sources of finance, different sources were identified. Here, the check marks, the more check marks there are, the more that they would rely on that particular source of finance for that area. Within resource management, Tirana identified the need to address its water system. At the launch of the GCAP, Tirana citizens did not all have 24-hour access to water. So through the GCAP, we were able to identify the specific need to invest in the water system to both improve its energy efficiency as well as its service coverage. And this is an investment that EBRD signed last year with the city in order to expand its water network as well as improve its service delivery. To summarize a bit on these GCAPs, the benefit for the city is that they're able to target a number of initiatives that can have benefits such as reducing pollution, improve the energy efficiency of buildings, improving water quality, or improving access to green space. In general, building or improving the quality of life for citizens within the city. In terms of the investments that EBRD is able to support the city through for a trigger project or for the follow-up investments, there are a number of different mechanisms that we're able to utilize in order to support the city to see through its investments. And I think what's important to highlight here is that often with multilateral development banks, the range of mechanisms is a bit more limited just based off of their governance. The EBRD, along with a few other institutions, are able to provide sub-sovereign finance, so finance directly to a municipality or to a corporate utility, so get the loan as close to the true revenues or the cash flows as possible. This is not to say that we can't do a more traditional operation where we provide loans to the sovereign government itself, but here you see the full range of the types of investments that we're able to provide, from sovereign loans, municipal loans, loans to corporate utilities, and then loans even potentially to a PPP, which is a public-private partnership set up between a private entity and the local government usually. The investment size of these projects ranges anywhere from 2 million to 150 million in EBRD finance. And this is also something that reflects the diversity of the cities in our region, in that sometimes investment of 3.5 million is able to introduce an electric bus fleet into a city that otherwise didn't have this. So you can have really transformational impacts for what might be perceived as a small amount of finance, and it's something that we're willing to work with cities on in order to see these investments through. So as I was saying, here are a few examples of investments that we've done through Green Cities, and this is in Batumi, Georgia, where we supported the city with a loan of 5.5 million to invest in its first electric bus fleet, as well as set up the charging infrastructure. We're now working with Batumi. We're about halfway through in developing their Green City Action Plan. This investment was supported by a grant of 1.5 million by E5P. In Chisinau, Moldova, we supported an investment in retrofitting the city's public building stock, a renovation of up to 120 buildings covering kindergartens, schools, and hospitals. And this would improve the energy efficiency, replace the windows, the insulation, and even some of the energy equipment in some of the cases, in order to improve living conditions as well as their operational performance. And this also was the project that launched Chisinau's GCAP, which is also underway. And the last example, I think, and to me, one of the cooler ones, is an investment in Banja Luka's, which is Bosnia and Herzegovina's district heating system. And here, Banja Luka, before this investment, at times was relying on what's called mazout, or I mean, the best way to describe it is heavy fuel oil for some of its district heating. And this was having major impacts, not only in terms of climate change, but also local air quality. And what we were able to do is, given that it's a city of about 180 to 190,000 people, this new facility has completely removed the city's reliance on mazout for its district heating needs. So now this new biomass facility is able to cover almost all of the district heating needs of the city. They have a bit more capacity on board, but on the majority of days, they're running on full biomass energy for their district heating needs. And so this has an enormous impact in terms of greenhouse gas emissions reductions, as well as showing how even one investment through the green cities, through EBRD Green Cities, is able to have a transformational effect on a city's energy systems. This last example of an investment is in Varna, Bulgaria, where we supported the city's investments in a number of measures to increase its resilience to climate change. And this is anything from road refurbishments, as well as parking zones, electric vehicle charging stations, and infrastructure upgrades. In general, it was in line with the cohesive climate adaptation plan that the city had in place. The EBRD Green Cities is now up and running in 20 cities, with 3 cities having adopted their GCAPs, 12 GCAPs underway, an additional 5 GCAPs in preparation. And here you can see the range of cities that are involved in terms of their geography. Ulaanbaatar, which is not on this map, and pointing over to the right shows how far from west to east we are spanning in terms of the cities that are involved. And there are certainly cities that are expressing interest to come on board now. We're hoping to continue to expand the number of cities and geography for the program moving forward. To summarize in terms of the achievements of EBRD Green Cities to date, so we've launched 16 Green City Action Plans, invested over $350 million in sustainable infrastructure, and the total amount of EBRD and donor finance mobilized in order to be able to support these investments is over $1 billion to date. This has reduced what we calculate to be the equivalent of about removing 80,000 cars from the road permanently. And it's a number that we hope to continue to see increase as we invest in climate change and sustainable solutions in cities moving forward. If you want to have any more information on this program, you can check out ebrdgreencities.com. It gives an overview of what our methodology is and how we work with cities, as well as little features on all of the cities that are involved in the program to date. And before we move on to the next presentation, here's some contact information for those of us who are working on this on a daily basis at EBRD, should you have any more questions about this model or how we are working with cities to both implement these Green City Action Plans and investments simultaneously. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the next presentation, I would like to encourage you again to write your questions to the question box, because then we can answer them right away while listening to the presentations, so that we don't lose too much time, because as you can see, we are already a bit running out of time. If you look at the agenda, our next speaker should be Stephanie Lindenberg for the European Investment Bank, but unfortunately she cannot join us today. So we continue with the presentation of Laura Lieger and Pia Laurilla from the DG Regio, who will talk about the European Union's cohesion policy and urban agenda. Pia and Laura, please.
Hello, thank you for giving us this opportunity. So, yes, actually we are here, two colleagues from DG Regional and Urban Policy from European Commission. My name is Pia Laurila, and in this short presentation I will kind of set the scene for the urban dimension of EU cohesion policy, and then Laura will take over and she will speak about our future perspective beyond 2020. Since we have here an international audience, I think it is very important to start with saying that EU cohesion policy is really a place-based investment policy that targets all the European Union regions and cities. So this is important for those of you who are located outside the EU. But at the same time, we would like to flag some opportunities for knowledge sharing. So this is by no means of non-interest to those of you who are not from Europe. This screen shows to you the increasing focus on urban dimension over the 25 years, and those 4 section areas really put forward the areas where we focus on with EU cohesion policy and its urban dimension. So above all, it's enhancing the economic prosperity and employment in our cities and urban regions. It's about promoting equality, social inclusion, regeneration of urban areas. And last but not important, less importantly, it's all about sustainable development of our urban environment to achieve the sustainability. And whenever we are having these interventions, we want to contribute to good urban governance and empowering local actors. So one can, with very strong confidence, claim that cohesion policy has an important urban dimension if we look into the investment volumes. So this screen shows to you that in the current period, programming period 2014-2020, from cohesion policy, we are investing in sustainable urban development more than 16 billion euros. And very importantly, this amount of funding is being implemented on the ground through more than 900 integrated urban strategies. And our member states, regions and cities have different tools and instruments for these strategies. I will not go to those in detail. They are illustrated on the right-hand side of the screen. And also a very important figure is that actually more than half of European Regional Development Fund, which is more than 100 billion, is invested in activities that target cities. So just to conclude on that, there is a very strong urban dimension. But in this short presentation, we want to flag up 2 concrete opportunities for funding and goals, and they are on the screen. For capacity building and exchange of good practices, we have URPACT program with 96 million euros, and this is targeting decision makers and local authorities, cities in Europe. And the other one is for experimentation, urban innovative actions that is mentioned here. And if I first open up the concept of this pilot initiative in this current programming period. So urban innovative actions is all about to test how new and unproven, so new innovative solutions work in practice in one locality in a European city. And beneficiary should be, always the applicant should be a city authority with at least 50,000 inhabitants in consortium with other pertinent delivery partners and wider stakeholders. And one important point here is that this is targeting one city locality, and applications are in European-wide competition. So this is quite particular pilot initiative. The maximum funding volume for successful city authority applicant is up to 5 million euros. So it is quite significant funding for testing this new solution. We have already implemented 3 calls. 4th one is now in evaluation, and there are 55 projects currently running out there. And very important information is that we have a last call for this programming period coming in September 2019, this year, this autumn, and the topics are listed on the screen. So there will be air quality, circular economy, demographic change, culture and cultural heritage. So city authorities, practitioners from European Union, if you are listening, please consider this. This is a great opportunity for last time for this period. And in this screen you can see that those 55 projects running. There are several in the area of adaptation to climate change. If I just flag up a couple of them, in Sweden, in the city of Gothenburg, is experimenting with the solutions to become a low-carbon city by 2030. They are quite far with the implementation of the project. Another project is in that very colorful corner of Netherlands. The city of Amsterdam recently started a project in experimenting with kind of vegetal rooftops and how that is bringing nature back to the city. So just to give a couple of examples. So strongly from the side of European Commission, we encourage you to look into this opportunity. And importantly also, we know that we are here for International Urban Cooperation Program. These projects are starting to yield results. And the issue here and for reflection is that how could these results, these experimentations and outcomes be feeding into the city-to-city cooperation? Because it is very important that these experimentations are scaled up and replicated to other locations. So we really feel that there could be an enormous opportunity for knowledge sharing. Then my final screen is here in front of you. It's all about this URBACT program that we have been running for quite a while now, I think more than 15 years. Having said, it's all about sharing experiences between cities. It's about networking and good practice, how to say, capacity building of European cities. And here again, there is a call open for applications closing in about 1 month of time. And as you can read, this call is about funding up to 23 action planning networks that help finding solutions to common urban challenges. So minimum 7 cities, up to 10 city partners have to be brought together to share experiences and learn from each other. And they have to prepare integrated action plan, test some small-scale solutions, and work in transnational partnerships. So this is transnational networking. The funding volume here, it is for the first phase, 200,000 euros, and for the total 750,000 euro. And again, there is the deadline for applications, 17th of April. And this map gives an overview of the current ongoing action planning networks. If I flag a couple of them, we can see that, for instance, City of Naples is a lead partner for resource efficiency action plan network. We see here that City of Antwerp is exchanging good practice on resource efficiency as well. And one message here to say for the international listeners here, that any city that is not located in EU can be an observer here. And well, certainly here is the issue that the cost should be covered by their own. But in certain cases, the lead partner, the leader of this action planning network, could fund the participation of non-European city in the activities. So again, we want to encourage International Urban Cooperation Program to follow the outcomes of URBACT activities. And now I will pass over to Laura, who will look into the future of Cohesion Policy and Urban Dimension.
Hello everyone, I will just mention a few points on this future dimension that we proposed as the Commission in May last year. So this is the sustainable urban development angle of our policy. What you can see is that we have been making some efforts to try to reinforce the urban dimension in the next period, as we have noticed that there was a huge success in the current one. We have now among our policy objective that can direct the funding in the member states, a new objective which is directly a territorial one, so a horizontal objective which will really help to target the funding in an integrated manner, targeting different areas, but specifically for urban areas. So this is kind of a new development that we have now, and reinforcing this urban dimension. The second one is also that at national level, we propose that a minimum of 6% of the ERDF funding that is allocated to the member states be only for sustainable urban development. So this is kind of a raise compared to the current period, and we hope that also this will be taken on board and possibly expanded, as we have noticed, for example, for the current period, the minimum was more about 7 or 8% per member state, which can have a good impulse for the urban dimension and the funding for urban authorities. And the third thing I would just mention there is the European Urban Initiative, which is kind of a new development that we propose to respond to the current observation that there is a lot of initiatives that we propose in the urban areas, but most of them are really kind of fragmented, and we were hoping that with this new initiative we can just gather everything and under one single kind of instrument or program, and that way we hope that cities can better understand what's the offer and can better benefit from all these opportunities. So this urban initiative is about capacity building, so it's kind of a follow-up of the URBACT program that my colleague just mentioned. There is also a part about innovation in cities and experimentation for projects. So this is kind of a continuation of the urban innovative actions. And the last strand is about knowledge and about policy development and capitalizing on all the experiences of cities and all the benefits that we can get from other programs. Just a short mention of our focus that is in the policy. So what we promote is an intervention that is not only targeting administrative units, but also specific neighborhoods or areas where the local needs are actually located. So what we want is that the local authorities really evaluate what is the intervention logic they want to have, and not only just stick to one administrative area. So this, with this trend, we hope that this will encourage also functional urban areas approach that covers a kind of cooperation dynamic to also create links between the rural and the urban areas. So this is really something we try to emphasize through cohesion policy in order for policies to be really adapted to the local realities. Quickly, I will mention the urban agenda for the EU, which is not specifically a funding opportunity, but as you know, the main themes are really trying to target specific issues that are really relevant for urban areas. So this is a partnership between the Commission, between member states and between the cities, which really try to dialogue each on a specific thematic topic and produce action plans with specific actions, most of them targeting knowledge, funding and legislation, really to try to better the environment for cities and urban areas in Europe. And of course, as all the documentation is available on the website that's mentioned on the slide, we hope that this can also be used in a wider way and also beyond Europe, because I mean, these products are really trying just to help to have better policies for urban areas, and it can certainly be extended and applied elsewhere. As an example, we have under the Union for the Mediterranean organization, we have also a platform on urban development, and we are trying to follow what's also being done with this urban agenda for the EU. So this is also something that maybe cities outside Europe can look at. And I will also mention that through our policies, we try to be really aligned with the sustainable development goals, and cohesion policy is really one of the most contributing policies of the EU, thanks to the policy objective it follows and the sustainable urban development that is embedded in the policy. So it really contributes to SDG 11 and as well as many other goals. It's regarding the policy framework and also the means of implementation, which is the funding that the cohesion policy provides to regions and cities. So in the current period, we evaluate that more than 100 billion euros are dedicated to urban areas, and in leverage, approximately 30 billion are directly managed by municipal authorities. So this is just something we wanted to mention as well. And finally, something which might be of interest is that we have created 2 years ago a one-stop shop, which is a city page on the website of the Commission, with which gathers actually all the information that we have on cohesion, not only cohesion policy, but actually all sources of funding directly to cities. So funding, also knowledge, and also legislation around different urban priorities and also more specific programs. So this is for the moment only in English, but soon it will be on all other EU languages. And you have the link also on the slide, so you can try to look at it and see if it's of interest. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Meanwhile, I also see a question coming, and I also still see Claudio's body hand raised. I can try again unmute Claudio, but before that I would like to read the question from Mariana Alonso Lanes. Her question was related to the Green City program of the EBRD, asking if the Green City program is also coming to Latin America in the future. Peter,
Hi.
I think you are the best to answer this.
Yeah, no. I mean, unfortunately, the EBRD region is very much set to the Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and Northern Africa. But I think that what we're trying to do is establish a replicable methodology that other MDBs could potentially employ, or other institutions could employ in regions outside the EBRD region. So while it wouldn't be a part specifically of the EBRD Green Cities or necessarily be a Green City action plan, we're hoping that the plans that we put forward can start to serve as best practice for cities in Latin America, as you're saying, to potentially take similar ideas on board.
Mariana, is that answers your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for the answer.
Thank you. Claudio, I will try to unmute you again. Claudio, you are unmuted, so if you have a question, you can raise it now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Now, my question is related to my mail I sent some days ago. It is concerning the call regarding the Latin American countries, because apparently there is no call at the moment involving countries from Latin America. So my question is if a call is under IUC is planned for the South America countries.
Esther, I am the best person to a certain extent to respond to this. Georgia here, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay. We have launched, as you probably know, one call for selection of new cities for participating to the IUC program about a month ago. That was a call dedicated to Europe, and this is the call that at the moment, well, actually closed on Friday. That's the call that was running for now. I would be very happy to put you in touch with the Secretariat in Latin America to explore what are the next steps and future opportunities. So after this call, with a great pleasure, it will be our task to put you in contact.
Is that okay, Claudia?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else would like to ask a question, then please use this raise hand option, which you see on the panel. Okay. As we started slightly later, I was thinking to add 10 more minutes, and if it is fine for you, then we also have with us one city speaker, Hans Verdonk for Rotterdam, and he would also be keen to share his experience with you on how to accessing EU funds. So Hans, please, due to the very limited time, keep it short, but the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for the opportunity still to say a few words. If I understand correctly, it will not be possible to share my presentation, but that's okay. I think what I have to say first is that you heard from the Commission that there is large amounts of money available, 50 billion ERDF, 1.5 billion ESF. But of course, that is not the amount available for Rotterdam. When we look at more at the local level, we have 12.5 million ERDF, 9 million ESF, which means basically 2 million per year. And if we then add some other funds we can use on top of that, and including what most of the European cities are doing, running for all kind of other initiatives like the urban innovative actions, like Horizon 2020, etc., etc. I think we run in between 10 and 15 million European funding per annum, depending on how successful we are in our applications. So with that in mind, you appreciate that we're not investing in main infrastructures with these monies. Of course, when our transport authorities or our port authority are doing major investments, either in the port or in funding new metro trains, they go to the EIB and not to these funds. So what are we doing then with these type of projects? Is that we try to focus on projects to get them started, which are basically innovative in nature, or are facing difficulties in requiring regular funding. Because if in lots of the innovative projects, commercial banks cannot properly value the business case as there is no history as particular innovative. So then you see market failure, and we try to use EU funding to kickstart these projects, to test out new approaches, and when these are successful, we mainstream them as far as possible within Rotterdam, and even better in the EU-wide arena. And of course, we do that by focusing. We cannot do everything, so we focus on the main societal challenges, which have been prioritized by our city administration, by our political focus. This is, of course, rather abstract. So let me give you a few examples, and I limit myself to max 3. For instance, what we have been doing is we have provided ERDF support to invest in shipping simulators, and that has the aim to improve the skill sets on students that are going to work in the shipping industry. And you appreciate that shipping industry is, of course, of crucial importance for a city as Rotterdam. And then the focus will be on using new energy sources like LNG and hydrogen, but also use new technologies, and they all demand new skills from the students. So by training those new skills in an innovative way, we can make sure that the employees for the sector are fit for future. The Commission mentioned before the urban innovative actions. We also have one. Aiming at linking educational institutions with the business sector. And the aim there is to align young people's educational choices with future labor market needs. We focus on an area where the need is high in that level. And what we have been able to accomplish is that the business sector has offered on an annual basis 600 career start guarantees for pupils that follow these courses. That when they have successfully completed their education, they will have a job in those sectors. That was a test. The big difficulty is linking all these institutions together and the business sector together. We talk about almost 100 institutions and a number of business companies to do this. But it has been so largely successful that we're now mainstreaming it into what we call a Rotterdam Learning Working Agreement. So that is a way you test this new approach, and when it's successful, you make it mainstream. A last example of that, the approach we try to follow is more in Horizon 2020, where you have the Smart Cities and Communities initiative, the so-called lighthouses. Rotterdam is one of the lighthouse cities running it together with 5 other cities. I should also say ICLEI is also included in this project. And there, in the Rotterdam case, we are implementing 13 smart solutions linked to a large-scale P2P redevelopment project. And of course, the large-scale development project is basically separate, but we link in mobility concepts like optimizing the e-bus fleet, smart charging parking lots. We focus on energy, geothermal heat and cold storage and heat pumps. We focus on innovative street lighting, and we focus, for instance, on smart waste management. And by bringing, by testing these approaches within our situation and by sharing it with our partners, but also with the other lighthouse consortia, we are making sure that these technologies do not limit themselves to only to the local level, but can be replicated also at a European level. And before closing, I maybe should also say that we are heavily engaged in the Urban Agenda for the EU, where we're one of the coordinators of the Jobs and Skills in the Local Economy partnership. And there we focus also on creating right financial conditions for jobs and skills and tackling mismatches by focusing on the new proposals and by seeking out how we can blend all these financial sources that are available. The Commission said the one-stop shop, but we have new programs coming up like the InvestEU program, the successor of the Juncker Fund. So we're looking into how can we manage that and make it easier accessible for cities, so that not only the Commission is working on that, but the cities are involved in that as well. So of course there's many more examples, but I hope at least this gives you a first idea of how we're trying to work with these European funding sources and try to make them work for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any question? Okay, I see no question coming. Maybe the information what you received in the past 1.5 hours was really a lot. Oh, sorry, I see one from Michaela Aufiero. Michaela?
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I was interested in the project of One Stop Shop. I have just arrived, so maybe I lost some information said before.
Hans, I think this question was to you, or maybe was it for the EBRD or the EU?
No. I might have been overlooked it, but I thought in the presentation, I think it was in Laura's part, there was a page on One Stop Shop Cities page.
Yes, sorry, I will reply if possible. So this is a web page that we developed a few years ago already, and we are trying to update it. I mean, as soon as can we want. and it's gathering all the information that about EU funding for cities and for urban areas. So you have like a classification of different topics, or you can also just look at financing opportunities, or mostly about knowledge, for example, and it's just a web link that we have put on the slide, and you can go and check all the opportunities. Normally everything is there.
Okay, thank you. So it's easy to find. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone question? Okay, no questions at the moment. So after the webinar, you will get all the presentations, so which will give you the chance to read through again, and as also the speakers offered, you can see usually on the last slides their availability. So, and as they offered, you are feel free to contact them in case you have further questions. Also, feel free to do that with us. And the publication supporting this webinar, meanwhile, is also uploaded to the website. So hopefully reading that publication, this will reflect a lot on what you have heard today, and will also help you to navigate a bit better in this very complex world of financial architecture, and which is one of the main bottlenecks usually identified, that the applicants, they don't even know where to start, which financial sources are available, which financial institutions provide something which could be relevant for them. Of course, this publication also had its limitations, so not all the programs and funds available could be listed there, but still we hope that it gives you a good overview. Yes, so if no questions coming, then from my side, I would like to thank for everyone attending today's webinar. And also on behalf of our presenters, I would like to thank your participation, and I also like to thank for them joining us today. And I wish you a great rest of your day.